For more on this breaking news, I'd like to welcome in retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Richard Newton back to the program, a NewsNation senior contributor. Lieutenant General, great to see you. So we spoke last hour on this, and now we're hearing the AP is reporting that Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying that the ceasefire deal is still not reached, that the final details are being sorted out. What does that tell you?
Well, first and foremost, it tells me that the devil's in the details, if you will. Also, let's be clear, and Robert, I believe, reported on this, that Israel, and certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu's his cabinet, and then the whole of government of Israel, still have to sign off on this deal. But nonetheless, I believe we're on a path to have at least an exchange of Israeli and hostages and Palestinian prisoners, but nothing's final at this point. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is just making sure we understand that. There's other issues around the overall settlement here. First and foremost, it's the implementation details. That is, for instance, the actual manner of how the Israeli hostages are released, when and where, how the Palestinians are released from jail and where do they go. The other aspect of this is there's going to be a flow of humanitarian aid. Who controls that flow of aid into Gaza? And while it's in Gaza, that, I believe, needs to be understood clearly by all parties. The other aspect of this is there's a number of innocent Palestinian, non-militant Palestinians, if you will, in Gaza, who need some evacuation because of some of the injuries and the medical concerns they have. How is that to be implemented? So these are just, again, there are many details to be sorted out here. But I believe as I said, Nichole, I believe we're on a path to have some hostages prayerfully and thankfully come home. But we're still a long way out from the end of what will be, at least through the first phase of what we think is going to be a deal here.
All right. So, Lieutenant General, I don't mean to harp on this, but being that there is that clarification from Prime Minister Netanyahu, do you think that potentially signals anything else, considering we have seen, in the past 15 months of fighting, we have seen many iterations of ceasefires fall through and not work?
We have, but we've never been this close, Nichole. I think what Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing, I think effectively so, is really he's setting the conditions on his mark. He's making sure that it's not necessarily what Hamas does or maybe the other negotiating partners such as Qatar and Egypt and so forth, or much less really the United States. It's really on Israeli terms and conditions, and he's got to make sure that his cabinet officially signs off on this, as well as the rest of the Israeli government. I don't have any issues in terms of whether or not that's going to happen or not. I think it is. But again, this is all, the emphasis is on Israel, and its emphasis is on who's leading this effort, not Hamas, but Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Absolutely. Lieutenant General, we know that U.S. officials have been participating in negotiations, in mediations, trying to make something work. What was happening, do you think, behind the scenes that makes this time different?
Well, first and foremost, I believe you've got the looming inauguration of President Trump next Monday. The fact that he is a significant figure now on the world stage is lending strong efforts, I believe, on certainly Israel's position, but Hamas being leveraged into a deal here. You've got President Trump's his envoy to the peace talks. You've got President Biden's envoy to the peace talks. By the way, have really been culminating and on the same sheet. It's a United States sheet in terms of where our role is here in mediating these talks. But also you've got, I believe, a bolstered Prime Minister Netanyahu, because he has truly put Hamas on its heels, continue to decimate Hamas. But also now that he's got a new president coming in office on Monday, one who has been very public in support of not only him as prime minister, but Israel. And so up on the global stage, you've got a stronger Israel because you've got a new administration coming in on Monday. Now, that said, there's been lots of details going back and forth behind the scenes, with negotiators, with all parties. And those parties include the United States, Egypt, Qatar. Actually, Qatar has hosted these negotiations in Doha, Israel certainly, and you've got Hamas. But there's lots of leverage going on here that has compelled Hamas to the table. But let me also underscore here, Nichole, this is the first of many critical steps, as Robert reported. The fact that we get the first hostage, presumably perhaps on Sunday, back home to Israel and to their family. But there's many more steps here, many more hostages to be released.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.